Hello, and we're just a few days away from some important watch auctions to be held here in Geneva, and we're going to give you some kind of sneak preview of the main highlights presented by the various auctions houses. So let's start immediately with Phillips, Bacs and Russo, and meet Mr. Aurel Bacs, superstar of the auction world, who's going to explain us his view on those highlights presented by his auction house. So I know that this report is quite long, but it's just so interesting to hear Mr. Aurel Bacs talking about all the details and the history around these timepieces. Listen to the man right now.
Well, this selection here, 6 watches, all vintage, or kind of vintage, they demonstrate that there is no single unique road to happiness when it comes to horology. Let me start with the one on the very right. This is an Audemars Piguet chronograph from the early 1940s. It's a reference 5020 in pink gold. I think, looking across the spectrum of chronographs, this is one of the most beautiful chronographs ever made by any company. As you may know, Audemars Piguet made much fewer pieces than most other distinguished brands, either from the Vallée du Joux or from Geneva, and I think at 120 to 180,000, which is in line with past results achieved for that type of chronograph, it offers a lot of value, especially when considering the all original condition and its rarity. Next to it, something absolutely different. Probably from far you wouldn't even guess what it is, but it is a Rolex. It's a Rolex from the early 50s that is not your typical Rolex in the oyster case with the magnifying glass over the date, or even a chronograph. It's a dress watch with a cloisonné enamel dial made by Stern Frères, or Stern Création, the same family who in the 30s bought Patek Philippe. These dials are handmade. Cloisonné means that there's little segments with a gold thread and then filled with the enamel powder, and it shows a dragon. In the books of Stern Frères, that thankfully have survived, it is described as a chimère, a dragon-like fantasy animal. Now, first of all, let me say that the companies themselves, whether it's Rolex or Patek Philippe or Vacheron Constantin, IWC, Omega, plenty of names, they didn't make the enamel dials themselves. They asked specialized workshops, dial makers, in this instance Stern Création, Stern Frères, to make these dials. Which is interesting, as you can find sometimes the very same theme on different watches by different brands. Now, Rolex today, they make, as we hear, roughly 1 million watches per year. There is no dial maker or enamel dial maker who can today supply the required quantities. Rolex is today not in the business of making a one-off, a unique piece. Now, Rolex back then wasn't yet the sports watch provider as it is today. Think 1951, from when this model dates. There was no Daytona, no Sea Dweller, no Submariner. All these iconic models did not exist. So it's actually not surprising that Rolex also entered this market for a very small number of pieces. This watch, interestingly, comes at the same estimate like the Audemars Piguet chronograph, also 120 to 180. And again, given how rare these enamels are, I think there's plenty of good reasons why one should raise the pedal. Next watch is, well, shall we call it the 250 short wheelbase in terms of wristwatches? It's the Patek Philippe 2499. Now, the 2499 came in 4 series, launched in the early 50s, made until 85. The first series, and the present one is the first series, came with the square pushers, made in really small quantities. 2 different case types are known, Wenger and Vichy. This is the Wenger case that is a little bigger, a little chubbier, shorter lugs, round back instead of flat back. And this piece here comes from one of the most important private collections and has never been at auction before. I sincerely don't think I've handled one that I can say is better than this one, because the definition on the lugs is as good as it can get. Maybe I've seen 1, maximum 2 at the same quality level, which makes this probably one of the absolute top lots, not just at the Phillips auction this week, this upcoming weekend, but probably across the Geneva sales week. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll pass by the $1 million or franc barrier with ease. I wouldn't be surprised.